It's the Sod Pod, brought to you by Grassland Agro. The Sod Pod. Welcome to the Sod Pod. Thanks for tuning in. Just going to introduce you here to all the boys. My name first is James Freeman. Good solid Tipperary man, living in South Kilkenny now for my sins. Talk to me, boys.
John O'Loughlin here, Sustainability Technical Manager at Grassland Agro, specialist subject Clare hurling.
Short subject.
Sean McMahon hails from the Farney County. Been with Grassland, I suppose, a relatively short time compared to yourself, James. You're one of the more experienced members on the panel here now. With Grassland about 12 to 14 months. Started off as a rep in Cavan Monaghan, and now I'm with the product marketing team. Davey?
I'm Shawnee, David Corbett from Corofin, County Clare, another banner man. Corofin, the gateway to the Burn, he's better known as that now, but suckler and beef farmer there from Clare. Like James now living in Sin there, down in Cork. I don't know if you're in Sin now, James, but I'm living in Sin anyway in Cork and doing my time there now before I move home.
That's great, boys. And look, it'd be great to hear your expertise and your thoughts, like you're on farms every day, seeing what's going on up and down the country and all. And like as was alluded to there with my expertise, 11 years in Grassland Agro, so it was a bit of crack. It's great to see the journey farming has come on too. It's really moved forward as time has gone. So look, I think the first thing we should cover here today is the Grassland Agro Soil Sustainability Programme. I suppose it's in its second year now. It's going really strong. Like, what do you find the successes of it, lads?
Yeah, for me, I suppose getting out and trying to put as accurate a plan in place for the farmer in terms of nutrient management planning. Farmers are growing, in a lot of cases, a lot more grass, a lot more silage yields than they think. Possibly could be struggling to raise their soil fertility levels, whether it be pH, P and K. But yeah, look, it's just, I suppose, it's diagnosing a problem on farm and putting a plan in place to correct it. There's a good bit of satisfaction in that. I don't know, but that's for me. What about you, John?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's following the full process through and from start to the cycle to the finish. And the structured approach that we take to soil, I suppose, is something that's evolved over the last couple of years, and I think we have in a good position. So,
John, you would have been one of the key catalysts of building this.
Yeah.
When you go back to that time, like, and I suppose with your PhD and all, what was the initial thinking?
Yeah, I suppose, listen, we were doing lots of different components of the soil sustainability program, but it was putting more of a structure on it, provide more value and join up the soil fertility across the three pillars of soil health: physical, chemical and biological. So I suppose maybe to start with, we do a soil sample, a normal Morgan soil sample for pH, P and K. From that we develop our fertiliser plan. During the summer we take our silage measurement, as Sean said, big offtakes there, P and K from silage, maybe more over and above what we thought. So we can test the silage for sugars, nitrates, yield. For us, it's very important for the fertiliser programme for the P and K offtakes, and it's very important for the farmer from a farm management point of view. Do the sugars and nitrates, which are very important on the day as well. Then we go into the grass vest and the salvia during the summer, trying to address the other aspects of soil health, which are your soil structure, which is the physical pillar, and your soil biology then as well. So that's a rundown of the process, Dave. I've skirted through that, but might bring us right back to what's topical at the moment, and that's soil sampling.
Yeah, and it's all back to basics, John. You talked about biology. Like, biology has always been there. Like, it's not a new concept or anything. It's always been there. It's always been working, and it's, I suppose, now more than ever trying to get that active in the soil and more active. And that's what we're doing with our salvia and our grass waste. So yeah, look, it's back to basics, putting out lime, getting structure right, actually going out to the field and digging a sod and see what's actually happening under our feet.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's simple things. We've been talking about lime for decades, and it's only now it's really, I suppose, people are seeing the value in it.
It's come full circle again, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%, James. Yeah, and it's look, it's a major one, and there's farmers that haven't let lime darken their door for years, and now there's lorry loads.
It is slightly improving though, because based on Teagasc's soil samples last year, like 63% of farms had a greater pH than 6.3. So
but the P's and K's dropped as well, Sean.
P's and K's went backwards.
So I wouldn't say we're home and hose yet. Like,
no. Phosphorus index 1 and 2, 51% of the soils was at index 1 and 2 for phosphorus, and for potash 48% of the soils was at index 1 and 2 for K. So as you rightly said, John, we have a good bit to go, but I suppose it's about putting the plan in place and being a plus at the end of the year for P or K rather than a minus. That's the only way we're going to build. What do you
for the year that's in it, Johnny? Like we saw the figures there a few weeks ago, just on even the nitrogen recovery based on pH, like, and it's crazy figures. Crazy figures. Just even going from a 6 to 6.5, like you could be getting 30% more recovery of your nitrogen. So, look, we just need to bring it back to basics and get them right before we ever look forward.
And even you take that soil sample, and we've just started. We've been out on the road since the end of October, the beginning of November, getting these samples done. And in some cases, the farmer had them done themselves, and we were able to then take that process and bring it through to the fertiliser plan. And what do we do with that fertiliser plan then?
Yeah, so the fertiliser plan, I suppose, they're available from Chagas or from the NMP online. But I suppose the key thing is that a fertiliser plan should be dynamic because it could change. So at the start of the year, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make our best use out of our slurry from a organic fertiliser point of view, after Dave said correcting our lime, and then targeting our phosphorus in springtime, maybe a drip feed mid-season, and correcting our main potash build in the back end. But I think, Dave, you made a great point in relation to nitrogen recovery value and understanding why we're applying nitrogen. We're applying the nitrogen to get it into the plant so that we can grow more, either a grass or a cereal crop. But if you look at poor pH, poor P's and K's, 25% recovery. Because as part of our sustainability program, we've been doing a lot of field events with the different participating co-ops, Jim. And I made a statement, I suppose, one that of the few things that anyone, I'd say, remembered from my 2-hour spiel. Well, it was only an hour and a half.
Kelly.
It was only an hour and a half, when you took out the Clare Hurling. But when you look at one of the big points I made now was that farmers have been paying €1,000 for urea the last 20 years, regardless if it was 250 or €300 a ton, because they're only getting 25% efficiency, Sean. Yeah. And that's something that really resonated with people. But like when you flip on to this year, poor pH, poor P's and K's, and urea at €1,000 a ton, that's €4,000 the actual cost to your farm system. And I don't think anyone can afford that.
Like, a lot of farmers are putting nitrogen on in the bag, but I think they're underestimating the amount of nitrogen that could come from the soil. And I suppose maybe we were underestimating it possibly too, the amount, like, from David, you talked about the Solvita test there. Just to explain the Solvita test, it's not our normal soil sample. We can test for pH, but we test for the nitrogen that's in the soil as well. But I suppose the average that we were seeing was 350 kilos of nitrogen per hectare, and if you take 1 ton of grass, it takes an absolute minimum of 30 kilos of nitrogen to grow it. So if the top performing farms are averaging 15 tons across the farm, that's 450 kilos of nitrogen that needs to be uptaken by the plant to grow that crop. But we're only allowed maybe to throw on 250 at max. That is the absolute maximum. And there's going to be a 20% reduction on that going forward. So I suppose for farmers this year that's maybe spreading to 200 or even under, that we're spreading to 250 last year, are they going to struggle to grow the same amount of crops that they were growing, or how are they going to put a plan in place maybe to counteract that lack of nitrogen that's going on this year because of the prices?
Oh, Shawnee, I don't think they will. Like, they just need to trust what's under the foot, as I said earlier on. You know, there's plenty going on there. It's trying to get that working, trying to get the biology doing the work and make that nitrogen available. And that's what the Solvita test is, testing how active the soil is and what the pool is, or what there is to play for. So
the Solvita test then, Dave, will tell us what might be in the soil. And we how can we unlock that? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, 100%, James. Yeah, like there's a massive pool there. Just getting as much of that pool available as possible. And look, climate is going to have a massive impact on that. But and climate is a massive dictating factor. But if we can get as John said, the chemical, physical, biological component of the soil right, we're going to have every opportunity to unlock that. But look, as John said there, farms differ massively. Like, take your own home place there, John. you probably have a 3-month grazing window or something, 2.5, 3 months. Like a
best land in the country.
My home place there were probably 9-10 months. And
Yeah,
look,
you're
it's
usually out of championship. It's usually the reverse between Kilmaley
Just
and
within the
Corofin.
same county. This
Yeah,
is
we have a
some
10-month.
it's chalk and cheese, like
They only be playing junior anyways. Or first team.
He's Kilmaley should be drinking for the rest of the year. They'd have to house the cows. But it's chalk and cheese, John, isn't it? Like,
Oh,
to be fair,
massive,
like, you have 3 months really great.
Yeah, well, it was the same. Well, no, in seriousness, your point there in relation to soil biology and nitrogen mineralisation was found by Humphreys, like, that done that study in 2008. And that's what we probably based our assumptions on nitrogen mineralisation on. But we know that that was actually nitrogen mineralisation, or uptake, rather than what was mineralised and was under simulated grazing. But even within that, there was a massive range. So if you take Kilmaley and County Clare, there was about 80 kilos of nitrogen uptaken per hectare in that trial. And then you go down to Pallaskenry, there was 220. And as the crow flies, like, there's only maybe 30k, I'd say. It's just the far side of the Shannon, so massive variation. And that's previously what we've been using for. But just come back, Dave, there's 2 points I want to maybe say or talk to you about. The lay-by nitrogen, I suppose, is what's it's like the current account. We could get access to it in 1 year, as you said, but there's a story you often tell, Dave, in relation to the power of the mineralisation from your experience with the heavy soils programme and the soil test results. And it's probably a word of caution for a lot of farmers who have soil tests from spring 2019 that maybe they could have backed down. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely, John. It's a great point. And look, mineralisation is driven by climate, really, and climate conditions, and that's what happened, I suppose, in 2018. Soil test results were spiked, and it was just down to that mineralisation process, drying of the soils and very warm soils. Moisture was added back in the back end. As I often say, and you laugh now, the biology was driven demented. It was on steroids. And look, it just the NP and K, sulfur. Look, all these nutrients were mineralised, made available, and they were sitting in the soil while the soil tests were taken. So,
and just on that there, Les, like, I'm just thinking there, the banner by is quite near where we're still talking about very different environments on the farm. And Sean, you're above in Monaghan there, and I think of Patrick Kavanagh, stony grey soil of Monaghan. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's not as straightforward as that. What's the kind of the nice up around Monaghan? What's under your feet?
Yeah, well, there's probably not as many stones in Cavan and Monaghan as there is in Clare.
There's 2 on this call with us, isn't there?
But I suppose, look at it, we have a higher clay percentage in the soil versus maybe down south. But I suppose a good example of mineralisation and soil release of nitrogen was the back end last year.
That's right,
that September application that farmers was planning on going with their half bag or their 3/4 bag urea. In a lot of places, it stayed in the yard, and it's there, and it's in the bank account for.
We're glad of it now, Sean.
Yeah, 100%. But there was more grass grown on farms last September than there was nearly in June and July.
Unbelievable, yeah. Because there's the other thing, like, so we do our soil sample, we then do our fertiliser plan, and then we go back to the farm, we discuss the whole situation, we see where we'd advise them best to go, and I suppose after that stage, then we go in maybe into measuring. We're coming into May for the grass-based guys. What's the kind of logic of that? What's our train of thought there on why that's quite important? What does it give us?
Yeah, well, it's the silage measuring, James, and that's very important so that we can get the offtakes of P and K. So we know there's a fixed amount of phosphorus and potassium it takes to grow a tonne of silage. It's typically around 3.5 kilos of phosphorus and 25 kilos of potassium. So every tonne is going to take off that much of each of those nutrients. So we probably falsely assumed that a first cut crop of silage was 5 tonne dry matter per hectare. We were kind of getting that information from the PPI. But if you look at the PPI, the annual yield is 10.7 tonne for the top performing varieties. Aberclyde maybe. So that was 10.7 tonne. But we know in reality these are capable of producing 15, 16, 17 tonne per year on a commercial farm. And it's the same with the silage. The yield is much, much larger than what we think. I remember I maybe did this with a few farms myself down in Waterford. I remember being in a field with Michael O'Gorman, and we got a yield of 11 tonne dry matter per hectare on his first cut. And he was looking at me and I was looking at him going, jeepers, you know, no one will believe us like when we come out and say this, like, because it had been grazed previously, like, you know, so that kind of set the tone that we actually need to make sure that we can quantify the offtake so that we can do a good job in relation to the offtakes of phosphorus and potassium for constructing our fertiliser plan, because at the moment the build up wouldn't be sufficient, especially on potash, Sean, based on the advice, because we factor in our advice for a 5-ton crop. So it's very important we do that step. And
the average for our sustainability customers last year was 7.2 tonnes.
Yeah.
And you said there was a range of between 12 and 13 tonnes. That was probably the upper end.
Yeah, well, I suppose
7.2 would be running a lot higher than what we would have perceived the average. When you look at 5.2s, 5.5s, would that be correct?
Yeah, well, we assumed it was 5 ton, like, so that's 2.2 ton, and like, you know, there was a
30
couple
kilos, 30 kilos of K per ton, or 25, whatever you say. That's 50 kilos if it's 2 ton ahead. That, look, it could be the equivalent of 7%, 2,000 gallons of 7% slurry that's coming off, that's not going back on.
Yeah, or bag of manure.
And that extra, like, it's been sucked out of soil fertility and it's coming from mineralisation as well. So farmers unknown to themselves have nutrients that are being mineralised, and it's like that. This is what we're trying to talk about, like trying to get farmers to understand that, I suppose, that it is happening. Every farm is mineralising nitrogen, and that is growing that extra tonnage.
Yeah, but also, Dave, every farm is growing more grass than they think, because like if you grow 1,000 in spring and graze it, and then you grow one of these big crops of silage by the 1st of June, you know, you've close to 10 ton by the 1st of June. Like, and if you take a second cut, it's the same story. And I argue we probably lost sight of this because more contractors are being used. You know, if you were making the bales yourself now, Pat Carver bales are different to anyone else. But Pat Carver, the 3-in-1 or the 1-in-3 as we say, Dave. But you know, if you were making that silage yourself or drawing it in yourself, you'd see it. But we've been using contractors more and more, and we've seen machinery get bigger and bigger. And the other point I often say is that if we only grew 5 ton dry matter per hectare for a first cut, every cow in the country is starving of hunger, like, you know, because the maths just don't work based on the demand and the number of acres most farmers cut, like.
Yeah.
And one of my favourite parts of the whole sustainability programme would be the grass fest. Getting out, digging that hole, getting the hands dirty. So we talk about that, the Teagasc Grass Fest, the visual evaluation, the soil structure. Tell me a bit about that, Sean.
Yeah, so I suppose that's the next step in the programme. We carry out the Grass Fest on farms around July, August. As you said, James, we go out with a spade, we dig a hole. You know, there could be 10 spades lying about a farmyard and it was never used to dig a hole and look at the soil structure. So it's really, really important, and we can talk about all the nitrogen that's in the soil, and that's fine. But if there's compaction there, we're going to be limited to what we're getting out of the soil. So it's really, really important to assess it, see if there is compaction on our farms, see what the root structure is like as well, and if there is a bit of compaction there, we need to put a plan in place to alleviate it.
And Johnny, if we can get over that compaction issue, like we could be talking getting out a few days earlier in the springtime, or grazing later into the back end, or even growing more grass over the winter period, having higher covers there. But it
is a serious knock-on, because like if you think of it, if soil is compacted, the water's going to take longer to percolate down through it. If it takes in the springtime, right, or the shoulders end of the year, and if it takes longer for the water to get down through it, the soil's going to be colder, so the soil temperature is going to be colder for longer. The same, it's going to limit root mat, or the amount of roots down in the soil, or the depth that they're getting down. And if you think about it, the roots is what's uptaking the nutrients from the soil. So if there's less of them, or if they're being inhibited in such a way, that's going to limit nutrient uptake. So we could have it in the soil, we're just not getting it out of it.
Because one of the things I remember talking to David Wall in Teagasc, and he was saying that, you know, sending out that aerator, but that is kind of the last resort. That means you're in really big trouble, so you might need to mechanically solve this problem. But so the other solutions, you go down there, you do your grass fest, and we suppose identify a problem here. We're coming in with a score in around maybe SQ3 or whatever. John, what would you do with that scenario? How can you manage your way out of that, try and solve things?
Yeah, so you at first you need to define if you have a problem. You know, that's the number one. And I suppose we identified that the Grass Fest was a very powerful tool, and we actually went and put it on an app, so that's available for everyone to download that has an Android phone. Then just go onto the Play Store and search Grass Fest, all one word, or Grassland Agro. The best of the Corbetts arguably put it together. Dave's brother Carl He's a right lad. He's done more for Grassland Agro in the week than
David did.
Yeah, so
Long year, David, a year.
But I think Carl deserves great credit. It's very, very good job he did in it. But first, you have to define your if you have a problem, get out your spade, go out, do the grass vest. Very simple, easy to follow. Get one of our agronomists to call out and have a look at it. And then really biology is probably your best way out, James, to be honest. Yeah. You know, so we talk about soil health and the 3 pillars as if they're independent to each other, but they're all heavily linked. And the other big one in relation to nutrient uptake and nutrient release, and this is something that Dave actually identified, is that, you know, when we were doing our Salvita test, we have to do the grass vest alongside it, because when that sample is taken, it's dried and sieved, maximum capacity, 100% soil structure, whereas in the field it could be very, very different. So in order to tie everything in together, we have to look at our structure. And it's 2 pint glasses is something that I've kind of been using over the last couple of weeks, maybe to explain the impact of soil structure. We see that, I suppose, soil structure is having a big impact on nutrient release and nutrient availability and uptake from pica during the summer, highly prevalent last year. And soil structure is bad, as we know, in general from our soil sustainability programme. But the way I've been describing it, James, is imagine if you ever did a hard day's work in your life, which is which is probably going to be very difficult or challenging.
You put in a trampoline there last year.
No, that's right.
You did 2 months off.
Don't get hold by hand.
It's a pond now.
Yeah, that's right. Just for context for our 3 or 4 listeners, James took on building a trampoline, a sunken one, against his own will. I think it was the better half's idea to do one of the sunken ones to be safer. There's been several incidents since, but he went out with his spade anyways, and he has a neighbour there as well that works with another company who we won't name, that gave him a hand, I think, done the bulk of it, but he went out with his spade anyways, and he was going on and on and on about he'd been broke up and he's sweating and X, Y and Z, and next thing, wherever he dug it, the whole thing filled with water after a week.
I now have a pond.
he's three ducks. But no, I suppose the main point is that after James was drinking the trampoline in the middle of the heat wave, came in very thirsty, and if you put a pint of water in front of James and you put a pint of ice cubes in front of James, he straight away James would be able to get a nice swig of water out of the pint of water, but out of the ice cubes he wouldn't be able to actually get it down his throat. But chemically, if you looked at both of those, they were both H2O, Jim, you know.
Yep.
But it's the state that they're in that influences the ability. The same within the soil, that we can test an index 4 for phosphorus or potassium, but because we have poor soil structure, because we have compaction, the state of the soil is changed and we can't actually access those nutrients, which is what we're trying to do.
And you referenced pica there earlier. That's exactly what you're saying. Even at an index 4 for phosphorus, there's something limiting the uptake of it. It's not going to be there, and as a result, cows are licking stones, licking concrete.
Yes.
Etc., which is a huge
200%,
problem.
Yeah, it's a great point, Johnny. Yeah, because look, essentially, like we're as we said there, you know, you're feeding the plant, and if anything's limiting, it's going to inhibit it. But back to James' point there, just on
trampoline.
I'll come back to trampoline.
Must see this trampoline someday.
Finish that. But on the steel, like, and putting steel into the ground, like, you know, be a subsoiler or aerator or something, you know, that is last resort. Like, you know, you want to try and do it, I suppose as naturally or organically as you can, you know, and limestone or calcium is a massive one, and getting roots down into the ground, like Shawnee and John, like James, you've seen it yourself, like there's nearly a benchmark now, because some root mats you've seen, you know, that are unbelievable, like crazy root structures, and it's the I suppose the poor structure, like it really puts it into context, like, you know, like it's very seldom now you see roots going down 6-7 inches into the ground, like, but it is possible, and that's the way we need to be trying to get things going.
But of the couple of thousand grass vests that we done last year, 63% of them was compacted. So like it's there's a huge
nationwide issue there.
Exactly. And originally, whenever I was thinking about compaction, I was saying it to John about if a paddock is grazed in the springtime and it's maybe damaged, slightly damaged because it's soft or whatever, and then it's damaged on the second round, that's sort of leading to compaction. But John, you would argue that it's just the size of machinery, and it's the size of machinery.
200%, Sean. I think, like, because you always have to be cautious talking about compaction, because there's maybe a cohort of farmers who'd love to say, ideal, I won't let out the cows until April then, like, do you know, but in relation to compaction, it's all driven by machinery. On balance, cows have gotten smaller because of the maintenance in the EBI, and you know, some farmers have shifted to crossbreds. I would be a fan. I know there's a lot of different opinions on it. You know, on balance, cows have got smaller, more compact. It's mainly down to machinery and the size of machinery and the conditions that we're travelling in as well. Ground conditions have a huge bearing, but also axle loading. You know, and we talk sometimes maybe about putting 650s and 710s on a tractor that weighs 7 or 8 times the weight of a small little Ferguson 35. It's a waste of time, you know. So that's something that we have to be really conscious of to try and sort out going forward, and mind our side as best we can. But it's not a cow issue. It's a machinery issue, in my opinion.
But we have to keep the system we're running as well in context like that. It is easy to say that, like, but like when you go onto the farm then you talk to the farmer, like, they need to get out the grass too, like they need to get grazing, like if they're feeding forage or meal or whatever, that's all extra costs. So like there is that side of it too. Doing damage in the springtime, I think there's no problem in doing a small bit of damage, but doing it twice is a major problem, a long term problem. Like, farmers need to feed the cows too, you know, and meal and forage.
Oh, definitely. I think the biggest thing, like, compaction is not caused by cows, as you said, Sean. It's caused by machinery, like, and the only problem where there is a little bit of damage done, as Dave says, is where the farm isn't walk and you decide to chance letting off cows. Like, I often saw it. You were side sampling a farm, the farmer would tell you that, you know, place is swimming. But like, there's loads of places more than suitable for turning out cows, you know, because you actually walked it. You can't decide on ground conditions from pit of a parlour or a cabin shed, like. Yeah. You know, so getting cows out is so important. But
and access too, John. Like, your father was involved in the heavy size program when I was with James, and like there was a particular farmer down in Castle Island that put in spur roadways and a main road going through probably a third of the farm, turned the farm inside out. The access
infrastructure, Dave.
But yeah, like in comparison to how early he could get grazing in comparison to previous years, and then the more grass he was utilising, you know, it was just chalk and cheese, like, you know. It just turned it.
So if you take that logic, John, right, of that machinery, then there's fertiliser spreaders, there's slurry tankers, there's mowers, there's harvesters 2 or 3 times throughout the year, and then the fertiliser and slurry possibly more. Then farmers going out and rolling silage fields. That, like that, that logic then is a no go in your books, definitely. Then, anyway.
Yeah, no, it's fairly. There's a good story here now. Dave is Big B and he's bonnet about this one. And I was above at Dave's there one day, and
that's why you mentioned it, John. That's why you mentioned it.
It must have been early on in the year. And Dave, as you'll learn over this podcast, is a fairly laid back man, and the only man I managed to see rise him so far has been Pat Corbett.
And Pat's his father, just for anyone who doesn't know.
Everyone knows that shot. Everyone knows Pat Corbett. He used to go around and introduce himself as Pat Corbett's young lad. But Pat, I suppose, a gas character, he was sitting above in the tractor. We were coming in and he didn't know what we were at. Probably thought we were just going around measuring grass or something. I didn't know what we were doing there, but he was after doing a little bit of damage somewhere along the way anyways, and he looked at me anyways. He gave me a little wink there, just a little, the tiniest wink of the eye, and he turned around then. He said, "John, I think I might roll that." And I said, "Geez, Pat, you better." And the steam started to rise. The steam started to rise out of Dave's ears now. But in general, like, it's compaction, going back to seriousness. It looks great. It's a bit of a novelty, you know, put a few hours up on the tractor, but in reality, it's
could be doing more damage than good here.
Oh, you are doing more damage than good. There's no doubt about it. Dave said you can cause, like, what we consider damage in springtime is nothing. Like, you know, we need good infrastructure, good access, good roadways, spur roadways set up, and even a backlatch, Dave, is, you know, because that's one of the main problems people have with on-off grazing, is that, you have to go out for the cows at all hours of the day and night. But a backlatch or something like that, or a good young lad, send him off to go for the cows and
It's a
bring 'em
labour
in.
saving. It's a labour saving. mechanism.
Yeah, and back fences and stuff like that. You know, we're all great with the strip wire in front of them, but having the back fence set up as well is very important, especially. You know, getting the cows used to grazing as well. Don't start them off in a big heavy cover. You know, have enough grazing pressure to go after maybe the heavy covers then as well. But like, it's just superficial. A shower of rain. I know it's been very dry so far this year. In January, 50-60 mil of rain across the country, but very dry. Conditions are good. No reason not to spread lime or turn out stock and get sorry out in right conditions, and that's probably more important.
No, that's ideal, John, there. Do you have any final thoughts? I think we'll wrap this up. I found
Yeah,
that really insightful.
just one thought there now, Jim. I just want to go back to the roller there. I just advise anyone there with a roller, if they have one, just to bring it to the nearest lake or river or something and back it into it. Let it off. But I was down in Wexford there in January. I was with Evelyn there, one of our ATCs, and we were driving along. There was a farmer turning into the farmyard. He had a roller with him, and he was flying. And I was just hoping he'd catch the. I was hoping he'd catch the pier. I was just hoping he'd catch it. He was so close to it. He slammed on the brake, but yeah, no, that's just the final thought there, Jim. Just on the roller.
But Dave, Pat bought a new tractor to pull the roller as well, even better. So you'd have a bit of comfort when you're out this year now.
Self-propelled roller.
Right, lads, we'll leave it there. So, found that fierce insightful. It was great to cover the Grassland Agro sustainability programme. Big talk on soil. I suppose the next episode is coming soon. We might go a bit more in depth into soil and some of the ways of solving it. We've done a lot of things there to give out about what causes it. We might have a few solutions to come as well. Mind yourself out there. Farm smart, farm safe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Sod Pod. We hope you enjoyed it. To find out more, head over to www.grasslandagro.ie or check out our social channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. That's all for this episode. See you next time.